Alrighty, folks, and welcome to our Tuesday Live re-envisioned. This is going to become Tuesday Coffee Chat at 9:30 every Tuesday. Today's our last day at 12:30.
I mean, we can have coffee at 12:30.
You can have coffee. Yeah, I'm having water because I'm having
sweet
water.
Tea, so
yeah. I'd already scheduled Kyle at 12:30, but we've got Kyle Backwoods Butcher on today, Shawn from Hack My Homestead. I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast, and we're going to talk a bit about food sovereignty. How's that sound?
Good.
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Guys, if you're in the live stream, give us a like and a share. Let people know that we are live. And then also, if you have questions, put the word question in all caps so I see it. We are still on my little teeny screen because I need to figure out how to get this big screen over here without it blocking my face, basically. That's the issue. So once I figure that out, which I will figure out, then we'll be back to I can read what y'all are saying. So let's start with, I haven't talked to you, Kyle, I think online in months.
It's been a bit. It's been a bit for sure.
What's happened? What's going on in your life?
It's just craziness. We were talking a little bit before. I've been in and out of the shop. We've had some technical difficulties with some equipment. We're back in the shop now. Literally today, I stopped slaughtering today to jump on this. I've got 4 goats waiting for me in the barn for after the fact. But yeah, and then it's just been running around like crazy. We've got 24 pigs on the ground right now between,
Nice.
Well, actually, no, we dropped it. So now we're down to like 20. Yeah, I think that's the number. I don't know. I'm bad at math. I cut meat for a living. Down to like 20 pigs between piglets and breeders and things like that. And we've been running around like crazy. And unfortunately, because of that, some of my content has taken a back seat. But we're ramping up this week. We're doing a big shift on a lot of stuff. So
what's causing the shift?
Well, it all started on TikTok. YouTube just kind of lapsed. Like it again, for anyone who has seen my content on YouTube, I over edit absolutely everything until it's perfect. That's just me, my ADD, OCD, whatever. I need to have it perfect. And once I started doing TikTok, within a year went from no followers to now I think I'm at 18.5 thousand followers in that time. And it's a completely different dynamic. It's now, again, on YouTube, I'm very informational. I'm a little funny, but this is what I'm doing. On TikTok, I am just a monster that I feel.
You are a monster.
You're really am.
Vegan killing monster.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's like, I get out all my comedy juices on TikTok and I just have fun with it. So YouTube took a bit of a break, which turned into me just not posting on YouTube at all. But I need to get back to it. And instead of doing 40-minute long breakdowns on how to do this, that, and the other thing, I'm going to be doing less than 10-minute videos. Like that's what I'm shooting for. 10 minutes is going to be the longest video I do. Maybe once a month, I'll do like a full animal breakdown where it is that 30 to 40-minute video that's very bullet the freezer. This is what we're doing. This is how it's going. But instead, I think I'm going to focus more on, hey, this is a pork belly. This is what you do with a pork belly. Cool. Thanks for watching a 7-minute video. Have a good one. Mm-hmm. Because it's a lot more digestible for people. Like I know just from editing, I can only deal with myself for 10 minutes. Like I can't imagine the people watching me for 40 minutes. And there's people that do, which is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, unless I'm breaking down the animal with the YouTuber, I won't stay on like a whole break it down into the primals video, for example. But then when somebody's showing me how to break a pig down into the primals on YouTube, they're going, roughly 10 times the speed of light compared to how slow I cut things. So I figured out you have to have the remote in a baggie on the table so you can pause and it'll be like, just cut here. And I'm like, okay, next.
Well, that's the hard part about editing those videos is, yes, I'm taking, if it's a big beef, I'm taking 2 hours of footage and shrinking it down to 40 minutes at like a minimum. So I have to watch that 2 hours to know when to cut, when to like put time lapse, when to do this, when to do that. And I'm anal, so I put like funny clips and quips and stuff and all that. But you need to watch that 2 hour video to be able to edit everything. And it's like, it gets exhausting. Whereas TikTok, I could be a goofball for a couple minutes, edit it together real quick. And it's like, oh, cool. 2,000 people just watch that. That's pretty good.
Now, do you do lives at all?
On TikTok? Yes.
Yeah. So do you do like you're breaking down, you'll do a live, but then you've got the stuff after the fact that you can go back and cut that up into smaller pieces?
Exactly. So I do 2 different types of lives on TikTok, and I love them both. And again, I am just getting back into it now, being back in the shop. I'll do lives where I just set up right at the bench. You can see what I'm working on. I'm talking to everybody back and forth, joking around, answering questions. And then I do what I call theater of the mind lives, because TikTok does not like me. TikTok does not want me to be on this app. I have figured that out along the way. I am what they consider dangerous content. So what I do now is I'll just take the camera and I'll have a Bluetooth mic and I'll just point the camera like at the tree line on the slaughter floor, and I'll just sit there and talk shit and slaughter animals because they can't see anything. And then all of a sudden you'll just see like a leg fly across the screen into the redwood barrel. So those are super fun. And I think, again, it's the whole algorithm. If you're doing a bunch of lives, you have a bunch of people viewing your stuff, which means you're more present, which means more people will see it. For anyone who has been following my TikTok, they know me and TikTok have been going at it, like going in and out of the creator program. My views have been interesting, and there are people who have hundreds of more followers than I do that have reached out to me and are friends of mine that are just like, it is so dumb that we have more people than you because you put so much more time and effort into your stuff. And it's funny. It's like, and I'm getting 300 views on videos that it's like, why am I even doing this? So I took a break this past weekend. Like, I barely posted all weekend. I was just like, I need an out. I need to walk away. I need to like be a person again, because it's a weird dynamic. Like, all of us people that are doing content, especially in this sphere, I look at it and it's like, I shouldn't be making content. I'm an idiot that lives in the woods and like is usually covered in blood. Like, I shouldn't, like, there's no reason I should be making content, but I am, and I enjoy it, and people like it. So we're going to figure it out at some point.
Yeah, I think the trick is getting people to see the content, right?
Right.
Like on TikTok, you run up against that $300 cap all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you don't pop it, then you don't go bigger on a video, is what I've noticed.
Well,
so I put almost no effort into TikTok because of that, because I'm like, But every so often I'll post something controversial and it'll have like 85,000 views.
Well, that's the hard part about it, is it's like I have 3 videos that one is over 2 million views, and a couple of them are like creeping up on 2 million views. Like, I'm still getting likes and comments on them. And like one of them, like, I'll go behind the curtain. Like, when I was still in the program, I made $1,200 off of one video of like putting goldfish in my water trough for the pigs. A $5 investment, I made $1,200 off a silly video that took me 20 minutes to edit. Like, so I said this on my podcast on Saturday. It's like, my co-host Joe, he's like, I run off goals. Like, I set a goal and I'm going to do it. And I'm like, I run off spite. If you tell me I can't do it and I'm not going to do it, you better sit back, because it is about to get interesting real quick, because I am spitefully going to do it and be the best at it. So that's kind of where I'm at with it now. I'm revamping. I'm back in the creator program. I'm revamping some of my stuff and just kind of making it work, trying to, at least.
Yeah, I find when you're an expert in something, it's really hard to find the spot where the content resonates with the most people,
Right.
because you're coming at it from a completely different knowledge base than the people that you're talking to. So, I'll do a video where I'm talking about, how we put solar panels on a roof, and, and like like you say, 252 views, and that's it. Like half of those are probably people that know me personally. And then I'll do like a minute-long talk just talking about our rainwater catchment system, where I don't really think I'm actually putting any useful information on there. And that's the video that everyone's watching,
It's
and
nuts.
so that's the tough part and I think that's why I like TikTok. It's easy to post a lot of stuff there. So you don't really have to work the algorithm. If you're getting a lot of content there, something's going to resonate with people eventually.
But you're still a slave to it too. You're still a slave to it's like, okay, I need to post something at 8, possibly 10, noon, 3, 5, 8. Like, I need to post something at these times because that is when whatever gates open in the algorithm that it pushes it the most. And it's like,
Nicole, do you use something to schedule your posts? What is that? Because I don't. I just do it.
I've used a lot of different scheduling tools. First of all, for TikTok, it's built in. So if you post through the web interface instead of your phone, you can just say post it at this time.
Oh, okay.
And it schedules it, which then means you have to bounce videos from your phone to your computer and back, which is a pain in the butt, but is what it is. And then I used a tool called Metric Cool for a long time, but they just started failing so much on posts that didn't work. So I've also used Opus Clip to chop up my long form content into smaller clips. I'm hardly doing that at all anymore with Opus.
Yeah.
What I'm using Opus for is captioning, because I like how it just generates the captions.
It's really nice.
It's super easy to edit. And I can say, go from this minute to that minute, and it'll just pull it out. So I've got a listener who's actually in here right now for 2 of my shows a week. She sends me like, these are the 3 to 5 clips I think would make really good shorts. And then we pull those out. And that I'm finding is making way higher quality shorts than just using the AI built into Opus Clip. But then if I make a short, like I made a short about this, I do my t-shirt of the week every week. And then I talk about this show coming up. And I just throw the whole video in there and it does it. So that has a scheduling tool now where you can do multiple brands, which is important for me because I've got Self-Reliance Festival, Living Free in Tennessee, and Hollow Roast Coffee. And I can then say posted at this time with this caption by platform. So I can actually tailor my descriptions to every platform if I want to as well. So that's working great. And I have somebody who's been helping me with scheduling and making the clips, because the part I hate about video is all the editing and all of that. Like I detest doing that.
Right.
So it's like, I'll make the video, but please don't make me edit the video or put the captions in. Like I can, but I don't love it. And she just schedules things out for the week, and then I can go in there and move it around if I want to, or I can see, well, this is where something's scheduled, so I can add something here or there.
Right.
And right now, Opus Clip is the leader on that.
Yeah. Well, I think like Shawn said, like it's hard when you are like an expert in something, and it's like, because again, my TikToks at this point, what I have found is I have a very dark sense of humor because I put lead on foreheads for a living. So that's what you get. And I have found that I can connect to way more people in the agricultural blue collar space who do something like this by just pointing out the real screwed up stuff that happens and making it funny. And then all these people come into my lives and I'll go off on full tangents explaining everything in extreme detail. And all these people that are following me because I'm a goofball on the internet are all of a sudden like, oh, all right, you actually know what you're talking about. It's like, yeah. So again, when you're going through all the lives, I have like a 2-minute thing I say every 10 minutes of like, hey, by the way, go ahead, follow me up here. And once you go over there, go over to my main page. We got a YouTube channel. We got everything with evergreen content of breaking down everything from blah, 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 blah. And I do get a lot of people over there. But again, it's like when I look at it all, it's like I still don't even think I've broke 1,000 followers on YouTube. And I've put there, I have easily 170 videos. Again, most of them being like 40 minutes long with full detail breakdowns and like how to do it. And then I'm just a dummy on TikTok and I've got 18,500. It's like, it's getting into the right thing. And I should be cross promoted, like cross posting. And I just, for whatever reason, it just kills me to do it. And it's like, I don't have the time to post the things that I'm posting. I am taking time out of my day to do all of the stuff I'm already doing. Mm-hmm. That extra 5 minutes to go over to another platform, redo everything, it's just a full mental block for me of just like, I don't have time to do it. I should be. All of these shorts that I'm doing for TikTok could very easily be saved and then uploaded to YouTube and Instagram like that. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, I just haven't gotten over that hump yet.
So you say you should be doing it, but you're not doing it. So maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
Maybe.
Like, why do you think you should be doing it?
I think I should be doing it because like YouTube Shorts is a real thing. Like people make money off of YouTube Shorts. And from everything I've talked to people about and gathered, that's where you really get your subscribers is YouTube Shorts. Because it's just people with the ADD brain just scrolling through. And when I have posted shorts on there, they do 10,000 views like in a week. And it's like, okay, like I should be doing this. But again, YouTube, like what it comes back to for me is I just get so frustrated that I can't post what I want to post. Like the things that I think people like, the things that people really want to learn and see are the things that all of these platforms are like, oh, that's too violent. That's too dangerous. People can't see that. And it's like, and all of them are different. You can get away with a little bit more on TikTok with some filters and things like that. You try to post that on YouTube, gone. Like they will remove that and give you a strike, no problem. Instagram is a wasteland. I have like 200 followers on Instagram just because everyone I've talked to, it's like, they don't even like, I have a friend who can't even post like knife handles. Like he makes custom knives. He can't even post knife handles because they take that down. So Instagram to me is like, I'm not even going to bother with you because you don't like me. You don't know me, but you don't like me. I already know that.
Have you tried, what are the other ones? Rumble or Twitch?
I have a Rumble and I haven't posted much on that. Somebody was talking to me about Twitter or X the other day. Now it's X. Was talking to me about X the other day. And I have meant to do some research on it and look into it. And like, because they're like, you can post whatever. It does not matter what you post on X. It will go. So, and there's still like a part of like, I'm still a hillbilly that lives in the middle of northern New Hampshire that I'm like, I don't really know if I want to get on X or Twitter or whatever it is. And I'm like, I'm already here. I'm already in the game. I might as well like just dive in head first.
Yeah. Well, Twitter has changed some of their rules recently on video though, where you have to be a paid user to post video there.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that made my decision very easy.
Yeah. So, and
Twitter.
I don't know if it's post any video or only the lives, but my video that I was going to post there today, I just went over there to look and I do not see it. So I'm guessing that it will not go through because I can post a link to a YouTube video.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not seeing actual video uploads, which is fine.
And it's like back in the day when I first started, when Josh was still around, like I was on Nostr, I was posting everything over there. And that as soon as Josh kind of disappeared from us, I was just like, okay, Nostr is no longer a thing for me. I barely understood it while I was on it. Well, everyone was explaining it to me. Now I have no safety line for this anymore. Like, goodbye.
Yeah, I had a hard time with Nostr with getting reliable clients. Like I'd have one thing that would work on my iPhone and something else that would work on my computer. But if I posted something from my phone, I couldn't find it on my computer. And Yeah, I struggled with it. I actually tried to get back on there the other day, and I don't even think my program that I was using works anymore. Like,
Do you have your backup keys?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I got to use
Yeah,
my
I don't
backup
even remember the
keys on a
keys.
whole new client to get everything set up from the beginning, and I'm going to do it because I actually was doing pretty well there, finding people to talk to and then like selling coffee. I had this whole thing running where at the end of the week, if there's anything that I've roasted that hasn't sold, I would just post it on Noster and be like, end of week closeout while it's still fresh.
Right.
Because otherwise I'm drinking that stuff, but there's only so much coffee I can drink.
Right. See, I have that on TikTok. I have people that are local to me that all of a sudden will pop up, be like, hey, I want to buy one of your piglets. I'm like, cool, perfect. You know where I am. Like, so that's been nice. Like, honestly, I've had the most in real world business off of TikTok.
Which is cool. Okay.
Yeah.
We got a question from Pippin Eyes. Could wood animals be affected by high voltage power lines being close to where they live? And while you answer this, I'm going to run out and get a cup of coffee.
So I have heard this before. Again, I think it's one of those not old wives' tales, because you hear it all the time, that it's like, oh, my grandmother or uncle or whatever lived under the power lines and all his animals got cancer and then he got cancer. And I am not smart enough in that to understand the how and the why. But again, I've heard it so many times that I would assume yes. Like, I would assume there has to be something that goes along with it to do that.
So what you're going to have with high voltage power lines is there is going to be a measurable electromagnetic frequency in that area, right? So as the power is moving through the lines, you are going to have disruptions that can be measured with an electromagnetic field measurement device. So I don't think it's that necessarily. I think it's probably that along with all of the other stuff. So I think that there's a possibility if you've got animals that are already predisposed to being sick one way or another, whether that's something they're eating, whether it's something that's been buried in the field, 100 years ago and is leaching out, stuff like that. The reality is that the areas that they choose for the pathways for high voltage lines, a lot of times it's marginal land to begin with, which means that stuff's typically been dumped there. I've been through a lot of different areas where right-of-ways were getting cleared for high voltage lines. And I mean, they're digging cars up out of the ground. They're digging barrels that are leaking something. And it's like, oh, we should probably get that tested. And the project manager's like, no way, we are not getting that tested.
You didn't
because
see
then we have to deal with it.
Right. You didn't see a goddamn thing.
Exactly. And so, that's what you end up with is you do end up with, like I said, a measurable electromagnetic field, whether that's positive or negative. There haven't been studies to show one way or the other. But I think that it's just as much the kind of land that they put high voltage lines through as it is the lines themselves. But good question. And also,
that is
good picture. That's an SRF picture. I can see the tent in the background.
Is it? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. Because again, you can go down the conspiracy rabbit hole of that too. Because it's you hear it all. Like, I was listening to something that we were talking about, the 5G and stuff like that, where it's like they put up 5G around the Philadelphia Zoo, and half of the animals now have cancer or something like that. And it's like, that is interesting. Don't know why. I'm not going to put too much weight into it because I don't have time to worry about the stuff I have to worry about. I'm not going to worry about 5G and a friggin' mountain lion or something.
Yeah.
So if we're still talking about high voltage power lines, I can tell you the impact it's had for us is that our electric fence does not work well under those lines.
That makes sense.
And we haven't confirmed that, but the place in the pasture where it doesn't work right is there every single time.
Right.
And then we have heard that it can impact fertility, but don't have any personal experience with that at all. But then that would be, I would imagine that would be if you're like just leaving your animals under there all the time.
Yeah. What you missed, Nicole, was we were talking about how it could be the kind of land and the areas that are typically chosen for high voltage runs more than the actual high voltage runs themselves. But unfortunately, we don't have really good data that we can go look at. It's all, anecdotal. And for every farmer that's running cattle underneath lines that says all of his cows have cancer, there's at least one that's like, I've been doing it for years and it's no problem.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and they do spray under there too with glyphosate.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, what they're doing to maintain the right of way could be as much, or if not bigger, of a problem than what's above the right of way.
Prep it in the first place. Like, yeah.
Okay, what's the best reference material for raising pigs for a newbie?
Well, I mean, you can go check out my channel.
Obviously, what's your channel? How do they
my
get
channel
there?
is at Backwoods Butcher 603 on YouTube, TikTok, all that stuff. I have, I didn't do, obviously, as we talked about before, I didn't do much about this litter we have now, but I do have a ton of content from the last litter of piglets that we started. But again, it's everything from shelter building, electric fencing, woven wire fencing, feed, all of it. Like, I have videos on all of it, so you can go check those out over there. And then there are a bunch of, thank you, Homestead. There are a bunch of other great YouTube channels out there, and for the life of me, I can't think of them on the top of my head at the moment. But
what he just said is there aren't any better YouTube channels than his.
Just me.
So go look.
Just me.
If there was anything better, he would know what it was.
Exactly. I mean, listen, guys, what are we really playing with here? Like,
Here up here says, I already follow you on the TikTokies, so I'll do it on the YouTubes.
I appreciate it, Adam.
That's really funny. I just came across a guy here in Tennessee who's using Korean natural gardening to raise his pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes like a small pen with 6 inches of biochar, 2 feet of logs, and then 2 feet of wood chips on top of that. And then he inoculates it with IMO, and it does not smell.
Yeah. Well, it's
and I was like, well, that's pretty cool for like the really small homestead, right? Because you know how pigs are. You know what they do.
Oh, yeah. We've had rain the past week and a half.
Oh, no.
It's great.
Like pigs in the mud.
They have a lake at the moment. It's dwindling down now. We've had a couple days of sun, so it's dwindling down for a moment. But we've had a lake for a while. Lake Vegan Tears, it was affectionately named on TikTok. But I think so. Honestly, again, check out my channel. But if you're starting for a newbie, the 3 things I would say right off the bat: make sure you have a solid shelter. If you think it's solid, build it sturdier, because those pigs will destroy it. They won't destroy it when they're this big, but they will destroy it when they're this big. Have a good shelter. Fencing, it's the most important thing. Pick your fencing. If you have a very large area you're doing, I never just do electric. I really don't, because it just gives me anxiety. And the last time I did it for this last batch of feeders, because I was like, all right, everybody, fine. You all say that you can get away with 2 strands of electric. I put 3 because, again, I was anxious. Well, hey, guess what? I live in northern New Hampshire where the ground freezes. As soon as that ground froze, I lost all my grounds. I lost all conductivity. And I had a couple 150-pound pigs running all over my property. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to play that game. So I do woven wire or hard panel on everything, and then electric on top of it.
And they still get out.
No, they have not.
Ours did.
I have not had any escapees since I've changed stuff over with my fencing. But again, it's electric fencing is I enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy doing it, but I also hate it with a passion because it turns into a bit of a game, like trying to set it up and get it all in the right spots and everything. But it's like where I'm at, my soil is incredibly sandy and I have a high water table. So conductivity wise, I don't have, like, it really does not go well. I have six ground rods in the ground in between two fencers, and I'm still like iffy sometimes. So I've completely switched my entire program around to 3 lines of electric, hot wires on top and bottom with a ground line in the middle. And that is solely dependent on what size piglets are going into those pens. If it's breeders or feeders where they're bigger and they're more apt to go over a fence, the ground line's closer to the top line. If it's smaller pigs that are more apt to scoot under the electric line, that ground line's closer to the bottom, because what happens there, as soon as that pig touches that hot line and that ground line at the same time, they get the full zap that comes off the fencer. They're not getting the tiny little pulse that runs through the fence and then has to run through the ground to the ground rod. They're getting everything right away.
Now, are you breeding yourself or are you buying piglets?
I'm breeding myself because I am.
So you can train your pigs to electric fence pretty young, and yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, it's super helpful.
Yep. That channel again, guys, is Backwoods Butcher 603.
That's me.
Yeah, if you want to check out his YouTube channel, and I'll probably go back and put it in the description when I descriptionize this video.
Thank you so much.
I'll descriptionize it, and it will be in the show notes for those who are the audio podcast listeners. A Rapier asks, will they get through field fencing? I have some partial rolls of what I was planning on using along with electric. I have thoughts on this, but you go.
So I love woven wire. It's very, well, I'm not going to say it's easy to work with. Once you've worked with it a bunch, it's easy to work with because you know how to manage it. I love it because you're able to fence in large areas fairly quickly with fairly dependable fencing. They will go under that fence. Like, that's the point of it. It is somewhat pliable. They will get out. So if you're going to run woven wire, you have to run electric. Like, do not trust a pig to be trained enough to not go through the woven wire, because they absolutely will, unless you've buried it 2 feet. And at that point, they're just going to dig it out to get under it anyway. Like if you were to use like hog panels, like the 16-foot hog panels, that is kind of your choice whether or not you use electric. Like if you're in a spot where they can very easily dig, use electric. If you're in a pretty hard packed spot and you're putting wood framing around it, you don't really need electric for that, because they're not going to move that super thick metal. Like, they're just not. Yeah. I mean, well, unless you get like an 800-pound boar that smells of sows and heat, and it's like, then all bets are off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pigs are amazing, but pigs will root around. So anything you do, if they're in a place too long, if they have the access at the edge to try to get under, they will eventually get under. That's how they've gotten out of our hard fencing here. And like, even though they don't like being zapped by the wire, they will endure. They will still test it. And eventually, one of the times they test it, they break the wire, and then the wire.
They're like the velociraptors at Jurassic Park. They're just they just keep throwing themselves at the fence to find the weak point.
They're like, we know it's here somewhere. And
Gale.
Yeah, exactly. I've had a couple of those moments where it's like, I'll drop you in the field. I don't care. Like, I am done with you escaping.
And then their baser instincts, if you tap into those, can turn them into wild maniacs. So, I find that castrating the young, where the mom can hear you castrating the young, is a pretty scary little transaction to do.
I'm in the middle of that at the moment.
How do you do it? Like, do you trick them? Do you whisk them away? Do you just do it real fast and GTFO?
If you're me, you wait way too long till they're 30 pounds, and you have to have 3 people hold them down in order to cut them. That's how I'm doing it. I do not suggest it at all.
Yeah.
How I do it, the one thing I have figured out in raising pigs is you need to have as many spots to put those pigs as humanly possible. And in those spots are for different scenarios. So on almost all my paddocks, I have a small corral with a small gate that it's basically the entry and the exit into the paddock. If there's an animal going into the paddock, it has to go in there. If there's an animal coming out of the paddock, it also has to go in there. It's the best spot to put in a trailer, this, that, and the other. So how I have it set up now is I have the gate pulled off with like a piece of scrap wood, basically piglet height, and I just feed them in there. Like, so before I feed the sows, I'll toss 3/4 of a bucket of feed in there. All the piglets are used to going in there. They go in there and eat. Usually once I feed the sows, they'll wander back out and come back and eat that later. But what that does is, all right, now it's castration day. I got my helpers there, feed everybody in the morning. They're like, treats in the morning? Hell yeah, we're getting in there. Sneak back in.
Gotcha.
Close the gate, and they can't get out. What happened this time was where that corral is, it was my first major pig build that I did by myself. And I put the multi-species fence in upside down. So all the big panels were on the bottom and all the small panels were on the top. So a bunch of the smaller pigs were able to sneak through. So since then, I have boarded all that up, and it's just been monsoon season up here. So I haven't had the time or a dry spot to be able to castrate them. And so how we were castrating them, my buddy of mine that was helping me out built a squeeze table. So it's essentially just an open box, essentially on legs. You can pop them in. Somebody holds the front legs, somebody holds the back legs, snip, snip, and pull, and just bring them over, spray them down, put iodine on them first, and spray them down with an antiseptic after the fact. And pigs are so freaking hardy that they just bounce back super quick. I usually try to hold on to them for about a week before I part with them if they're being sold, just so I make sure everything's healing right. There's no hernias or anything like that.
So the next question is, and this one is, I hear it all the time. So explain how castrating a pig works and why banding does not work.
This is a dark episode. All right. So
let's talk about balls.
Let's talk about balls. All right. Pigs cannot be banded. Their testicles are like attached to them. They don't sag. They don't hang down. They are right up there. So you have to cut them. And then, so essentially, like I said, we'll start off where I just said, if you don't have a squeeze table, you can kind of situate them either by holding both their front and back legs in your lap and somebody else cutting in between them. Also not fun. I also don't suggest that one. That one's not super fun. You can sit on them. But essentially what you're doing is you're pushing down from the top, making 2 incisions, cutting the membrane of the testy, popping it out. And this is the part that usually turns people. You should not slice the vas deferens. Like, you should not slice the connection between them. You should pull them. And the reasoning for that is you are going to have way more bleeding if you do a surgical cut to remove the testicle than if you pull everything out. If you pull everything out, it's naturally going to crimp down on itself and kind of obviously not cauterize because you're not introducing anything there, but it's going to naturally clot faster because it's going to be a smaller area.
Okay. And so I've never castrated a pig. We've castrated pigs here several times. And every time I'm like, I need somebody to show me how to do this, they come in and they do it so fast that I don't get to do one.
Right.
And last time the 650-pound mother was trying to push the actual fence out to get at us. So we decided not to mess around and learn that day.
See, that's where we got stuck with is all the pigs that were in there. My buddies were like, well, let's just go in and get them. And I was like, Fun story. Yeah, no, that's not. I got 2 mamas in there. The difference is they're so done. They are, because the piglets are, I think they're a little over 10 weeks old right now. So they're done. They want nothing to do with these piglets anymore. They're tossing them. Like, they don't care. So there's that immediate instinct of like, oh my God. And then they're just done. They just want nothing to do with them and walk away. But again, as soon as you run in and grab one, that's the difference. Like, there is nothing scarier than like a 500-pound sow, mouth wide open, running way faster than you, as you're also trying to hold on to like a 20 to 30-pound piglet that's also trying to escape you. And then you have to hop over an electric fence because, listen, you're not slowing down enough to step over it. You have to like Olympic level, like hop with both legs over this fence carrying a 30-pound pig and hope that sow is trained enough that she's just not going to blast through that electric fence to get to you. Pigs are an interesting critter.
Sounds
like
fun.
It's not all the time.
Yeah, that was not my favorite part. I was talking to Tactical because we have sheep. And I was like, next round, why don't we just castrate the males?
Yeah.
Because we have a variety of sheep where if you leave them intact, it doesn't impact the flavor of the meat. So then it's like, okay, great. One less thing you have to deal with, right?
Well,
but right now we need to separate the males from the females because of what could happen if we leave them together. And I was like, this would be a lot easier if nobody had anything left right now. But now they're older, so that's a whole different ball of wax. And he was like hemming and hawing. He's like, I don't know how much we'd have to pay the vet to come out here. I'm like, well, you just banned them.
Yeah,
but you banned them at like, I think a week or 2 weeks, like really young. Yeah. So yeah.
You want to really have an existential well, Nicole, this wouldn't be as much for you, but Shawn, have you ever crimped anything?
Yeah.
That one still floors me. It's for whatever reason, that one's like, as I'm doing it, I'm like, I hate it. I hate it so much because you just got to sit there and you got to wait for that click. And it's like,
raising livestock is not for the faint of heart.
It's absolutely not for the faint of heart. That is the very true statement.
But it does add like stability into your food plan. Like I said, we were going to talk about food sovereignty. We haven't overtly talked about food sovereignty here, but we have been the whole time.
Right.
Like when you take control of your food, that means you have to learn how to do unpleasant things related to your food. But at the same time, nobody's coming to take it right now.
That is massive. And I mean, they're not coming to take it right now. They're attempting. They're doing their best. They're working their fingers into everything they can. That's for sure.
Yeah, they're hitting that rock with the hammer until it's not it's all the individual rocks that breaks it, or all the individual hits that breaks it. Right. So there's definitely an effort, and we've seen it even here in Tennessee, where we do have groups in the state that are trying to push the other direction. I think we had a food bill introduced this last session where it was literally the food sovereignty bill, but it didn't make it out of committee. And it's like, poll your constituency. You're going to get 90% of people that think that, yes, a person should be able to choose the food that they put in their body. End of story, period, no exceptions. And that common sense can't even make it out of committee. And it's half of it is, well, we got to make sure we get elected the next time, because this is not really about government. It's really about getting power and keeping it. And there's probably some, Cargill or Smithfield or some other constituency or Purdue.
Tyson.
Yeah, that isn't going to like this, and we might need their money. So it's better to just not have to vote on it.
On the food sovereignty stuff, you have both the major food manufacturing lobby and the pharmaceutical lobby.
Right.
Not super stoked about it. In Tennessee, we have some really great legislators who don't GAF about that at all, who are willing to always push something on the food freedom side, right? Like Senator Nicely. But we have other ones who are vehemently against any food freedom.
Right.
Like they'll go after raw milk. But one of them fabricated data to blame raw milk for ill children.
Yep.
And then when you dug down, you found out that the way they got listeria had nothing to do with raw milk.
Right.
No.
It was on the lettuce.
Right.
At the store. So
well, that's the craziest thing about it is so many of these people are so vehemently against it with zero data to put towards it. And it's like what we're dealing with up here is it's like I get frustrated because so for context, where I am in New Hampshire, Maine is like there, like right there. I can see Maine from the driveway.
Maine's a great state for food freedom.
It's amazing. They just completely changed their cottage industry laws a couple of years ago. So it's where you could have never seen a pig in your life. You could raise that pig. You could never have touched a knife in your life. You can cut up that pig, put it in Ziploc bags and go, would you like to buy this single pork chop? And all of it's completely legal.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's right there. Like it's right there. And my entire world would be changed if that's there. And it's like, I had my hopes up for the Prime Act when that was going through. Thomas Massey and Joel Salatin were trying to put that bill through Congress where it was essentially like custom exempt butchers could also cut products for resale. I haven't heard a single thing about that in a year. So it's like, I guess that's not going anywhere. Like it is so frustrating to the point where it's like, I've thought about I'm already in my town zoning board, things like that. But it's like, do I have to like all of a sudden run for like New Hampshire, like government stuff to like try and get this stuff going? It's like, if I am sitting here starting to go like, oh God, do I have to be in the government to make this happen? You know, it's not good. Like,
yeah. Well, and here's the other side of that, right? So I spoke at an event in East Tennessee a couple months ago, and Joel Salatin was there. And the crux of his speech was, you're not going to jail.
No.
Not the first time, No. So in the universe of things that you could do that are going to make your life better, they're going to make you healthier, your family healthier, your community healthier, theoretically, just do it, because the worst thing that's going to happen the first time is you're going to get a letter, they're going to say, hey, stop doing this or you're going to get fined. We've heard all the stories about, SWAT teams showing up at the raw milk place, but that's like, and then you find out that's like the 8th or 9th different time that these things have been, and basically at that point, the government is retaliating on the person that's trying to exercise their freedom.
What that is that's a photo op.
Yeah.
They're proving a point.
And so my thing's always been, do what you want to do. Don't advertise it if you're not doing everything above board. Like we talk about the vermicomposting flush toilet system in here in Tennessee, right? Not legal, right? So
not legal at all.
So we're not putting him in Tennessee. You know what I mean? Like
it's called loopholes, kids.
We just do standard permaculture toilets here. We do standard permaculture toilets. There's not a single vermicomposting toilet anywhere in the state of Tennessee. I promise you, I've checked. So any of you guys, FBI agents that are watching this right now, don't worry about. But the thing is, just
know what? Not illegal though if you put it between your toilet and your septic system and pre-treat before it goes into your septic system.
Correct. As long as the effluent is going into your septic system, you're perfectly fine. So, but that's just an example of like using their rules against them, right? And so my thing has always been, do the thing that's best for you and your family. If it's not strictly within the confines of the law, don't advertise what you're doing or how you're doing it. Whatever part of that isn't strictly within the confines of the law, just don't make a big deal about that. And then there's always the thing of, in the event that you do run afoul and they start trying to get, I don't know what the word is, but they're trying to hit you with the power of the state. You can always say, would you like to find out who's a better marketer? Like, do you think that I can tell my story better than you can tell your story to the population? Because we can play that game. You can't. We still have the First Amendment, and until you get a judge in Tennessee to issue a gag order because you're trying to come, pull my tomato plants out of the ground because you think they're marijuana plants, like we can have this fight, and you'll probably lose.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it was actually okra plants, but yeah.
Yeah.
Not marijuana. Okra is not marijuana, for the record.
That explains it. No, it's tough. And it's like, again, you also need to know the law. Like, you need to do your research and know the law. I have gotten very good at explaining to my customers the law and why we are not breaking it. Like, and that's just what you have to do. You got to work those loopholes. You got to figure out how to do it, just because at the end of the day, it's all dumb. It's all like, if you can just sit there and look at a piece of paper and just go, none of this makes any sense at all. And it's like, again, when it comes down to the crux of it, it's like, oh, well, it's safety and it's the community safety and this, that, and the other thing. It's like, hey, guess what? If anyone can cut up a pig or whatever and buy single pork chops from somebody else, if they go to a guy's house and they look and see his operation and then they look at his meat and then they get sick, that's on them.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're also not going to buy pork from that guy again.
Well, and here's the other thing. If someone blatantly mishandles something and that person is injured, we already have laws that handle that.
Right.
Like,
that's
go
already
after that
against
person.
the law.
We don't need you to protect me from making a decision. Let me make the decision, and then if there's a problem, I can handle the problem.
Right. Yeah. Again, we're a fun group of people anyways, where it's like, don't coddle us. I don't need to be coddled. I already make horrible decisions. I don't need your help to stop me from doing other ones. Like,
I mean, I have this. Well, I have a very emotional decision to make about a smoked meatloaf. You know that, right? It's been in my fridge 10 days, which is 3 more than 7.
Yeah.
Doesn't smell bad.
Then you're fine.
Yeah, right. I know.
Even if it did, you're probably still fine.
Right. You're
but I was just like,
you're gonna be all right.
Man, it's over the line.
Yeah, it's an imaginary line. Some guy made that up.
Yeah. And
but
guess what? You could throw that in a stew.
Based on the worst performing fridge in the world.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's some you see, but again, that changes to so even what we were just talking about with all of this. The fact that meatloaf might not be okay at 10 days has nothing to do with the meatloaf itself. Like you just said, it's the worst fridge we've ever had. It would more have something to do with the fridge not working properly is the reason why you might not eat that meatloaf. It's not.
Or you left it on the counter for 2 days before you put it in there.
Right. If you do that, I mean,
that's not what happened.
I was going to say, if we're talking about the same meatloaf, I suggest, as somewhat of a subject matter expert, don't eat that meatloaf. If you left it on the counter for 2 days, it's August.
Yeah. You can do that in New Hampshire in January.
All right. So here's a question about food safety. Is there anything? So let's say you've got a 10-day-old smoked meatloaf in your refrigerator.
For example.
Just theoretical, off the wall. I just came up with this.
Never happened to anybody. And
you didn't want to throw it out. Is there anything that could be in that meatloaf that you wouldn't be able to make safe by cooking?
No.
There are some organisms that if they grow, you may not deactivate them by cooking.
Right.
Because I went down that rabbit trail. It is possible. And the kind of sick you will get is you're not going to the hospital, probably. You're probably going to have some
who cares?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, I care a little bit this week, but
Listen, I had salmonella for 2 weeks. I did
Oh,
not
yeah,
go to
that
the hospital
sucks.
once. Oh, I looked fantastic though. Oh my God, I slimmed down like crazy. I was like, whoo, too bad this isn't summer.
yeah, I got salmonella at the barbecue once. Undercooked chicken, like the
I got it
traditional
the
way to
dumbest.
get it. And I remember the vomitous event that happened.
I got it the dumbest way possible. I literally moved my chicken coop, like literally just took forks on the tractor and went, bam, bam, picked it up, moved it to the other side of the property, just damn near blowing the whole time. And then me being a genius, didn't wash my hands and went inside and made a sandwich. Then it was coming out of both ends for about 2 weeks. It was real fun.
Yeah.
Wash your hands, kids.
Wash your hands, kids. If we didn't learn that in 2020, we're never going to learn it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although Salatin's like, just rinse them with water.
Yeah.
I mean,
your immune system needs to be strong, and I'm like,
I'm still kind of like that. I'm still like, nah, it's fine. I'm not dead yet.
That's what I want to hear from my butcher.
Not fine.
I never wash my hands. Let me cut this pork chop for you.
I just came in from changing my daughter's diaper. Let me get this pork chop for you.
How did I get E. coli in my pork chop?
No idea.
No idea. Yeah. I think learning about how the foodborne pathogens work, though, and I learn more every year, is cool because then you can ask why. There was a post on Facebook in our Middle Tennessee Homesteaders group about the Presto pressure canner, which is an electric one. They have an electric and a non-electric. And their process for the canner is you put the jars of stuff in without the weighted gauge on there. And it goes for a while, and then it beeps at you. You put the weighted gauge on, and then it finishes the cycle. Right. She forgot to take that weighted gauge off for that first step. And then was worried the food wasn't safely canned because that was off and then put on. Right. So the look on your face is like, why would that be? So then, people were like, yeah, I just reprocess them or just use them. So and I was like,
so it would be like overpressured then?
That was the thing. I was like, what that weighted gauge does is makes it so it can close and bring up to pressure. But I'm 97% sure the way they figure out if it's up to pressure is with an electric sensor in the machine. I don't think it's a mechanical thing, which means it doesn't flipping matter. And that weighted gauge has an on-off setting too. So if you put it on wrong, it will just steam out and it will never get up to pressure.
Right.
So I was like, did you try calling Presto and asking him about the on-off thing? Because my theory about why they have that step that way is that they have you put it on fresh every time to make sure it's in the closed position, so you don't leave it in the on position.
That makes a lot of sense.
And it's a human, but I don't know. And she's like, I'm just gonna blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, so now I'm gonna call Presto and ask this question because now I'm curious. And they usually will give you an answer about the why. Right. And once you're able to ask that why, you're just thinking like, how would this work? Because if I left the pressure gauge on my stovetop canner, it just would get up to pressure faster than I was expecting because you didn't steam it for 10 minutes first.
Yeah, basically what's probably going on there is that they want to bring the pressure up slowly so that you don't have any integrity issues with the jars. And so that's probably the reason why they say, because essentially what's happening there is you're getting it to temp, and then, or to a set temp, then you're putting the weight on, then you're getting it to the additional temp, then the timer starts.
Yeah.
So if you just leave the weight on the whole time, the timer's still not going to start until it's at the right temperature internally. So from a food safety standpoint, it's not a problem. You're just more likely to bust a jar, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's probably, that would be why I would call and ask, why is this step this way?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with when the lids were out in 2020, 2021. There was all this conspiracy theory about never going to get jar lids again for canning. So I called the ball jar lid factory and I said, hey, I'm somebody who buys lids and we can't buy lids. Can you tell me why there aren't lids? And they're like, oh yeah, we have 4 times the demand that we did this time last year and we're out. and we're retooling as fast as possible to be able to create more lids. But what we've done is supply our regular orders first, and then additional orders we do second tier because there are our ongoing customers.
Yeah.
And it happened in the 70s. Same thing happened in the 70s.
Well, it's like the big thing that like people need to realize. All of these instructions are made for the dumbest people.
Yeah.
They write instructions so that the dumbest person can pick up a product and use it. Like, it's made for the person who cannot think for themselves and needs everything written out exactly how the process is supposed to go. Whereas a normal person can get a hold of something, read the instructions, go, that's obvious, or that makes sense. And then, hey, I've used this 20 different times. I know this is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
That's where we're looking at with that.
Yeah. Rewilder uses the Tattle or Tater or whatever those are. Tattler lids. I used those for 1 year and gave them all to somebody else. I did not like them. But
Did
this
you have
year,
sealing issues?
I had some sealing issues on pressure can stuff, and I found them to be a pain in the neck to use where like you have to do 2 steps, and normal lids, like the disposable lids, 1 step.
Right.
And they're
so I like the single step.
And they're like what, 17 cents a piece if you buy them in bulk?
I just got lids for 39 cents a piece because they're higher quality. So I've had jar sealing issues this year.
Mm.
And it's the quality of the lids. And it was lids that I bought in 2021 from Fillmore, which I used to just order in bulk. And yes, it's been a number of years, but I've stored them carefully. And I'm just now out of my other lids into those lids in the last 2 years. And I started having lids, like jar sealing issues at the end of last season. This season, I did my first batch of green beans. I had 25% fail rate. And I went to Walmart and bought ball lids and everything sealed. Well, yesterday I had 4 out of 24 jars did not seal with the ball lids. And I ordered a whole nother brand of lid that touts their extra thick rubber. So if those work, I'm going to do a video about all 3 kinds of lids and show the difference in quality, because there was like, I had used Fillmore for a decade. And then boom, it's just like complete like failure after failure. And I think what happened is either when they had that high volume thing, the quality of what they were producing went down because they just had new people, or they've tried to subtract so much from the lid, to make more profit that the lid is now not very good.
Right.
Yeah.
But a company would never do that.
I know. Yeah.
They're way more worried about their bottom line than your food safety.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where it's like to get back to the food security thing, like talking about all these rules and regulations and how everything like meat wise, like everything needs to go through the USDA. Everything has to be inspected by a USDA inspector. The USDA inspector is God and has to be, hey kids, I used to work in a USDA facility. There's a handful that are real good guys and really take the job seriously. Guess what? They're just another government employee that do not care. They don't. Like at the facility I worked at, it was a mom and pop shop. We had a customer that would very regularly buy retired dairy cows at auction and put them out on pasture for 6-8 months, which, again, for anyone who has been around dairy animals, they're not used to grazing. If they've been in like a dairy setup, like it sounds dumb, like, oh, it's a cow, it should just be able to go out and graze and do whatever. If it has never been able to do that or had to do that, it does not know how to do that. So we would get these cows in that are already 4, 5, 6 years old, and now they've essentially starved in this pasture for 6-7 months, and they'd come in and they would be the stickiest, leanest, and again, you're already dealing with a dairy animal in the first place, and these things would just be disgusting.
Yeah.
USDA inspector would come in, Oh, there's a little piece of hair on the leg. Other than that, you're good. It's like you're worried about that tiny little piece of hair up there on the knuckle that's going to get chopped off anyway. But you're just going to let all of this pass. And like there were a handful of times where like the owner was like, there is no way this animal's going into the cooler. Even after the USDA inspector was like, yep, good to go.
Yeah.
Clear as day. And it's like, really? Like, that's what you're fine with passing because it passes the very minimum criteria of what's safe.
Well, and the animal has to be alive when it gets there, but it does not have to be well.
Right.
And so people will have a sick animal. They'll be like, well, better get it to processor before it croaks.
Yeah.
When I have a sick animal, I'm like, there's this internal dialogue that happens where I'm like, do I want to eat that animal?
I always err on the side of don't eat it.
Yeah, we don't.
Like I am very. I did a tech talk about this, and I talked about it on my show a little bit. I had a customer call a couple weeks ago, and I was home with the kids, and he goes, "Hey, I've got a roaster that has a hernia. Can you take care of it just as a whole roaster?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine. I have my kids bring it in an hour and a half, and we'll get it done." Cool, fine. Get it all set up. I walk back over from the shop and I see no trailer. And I'm like, okay, strike one. That's going to be bad. See a dog kennel in the back. Strike two. That's going to be worse. And walk up to this dog kennel and it was a maybe 12-week-old piglet that they thought it was an abscess and it was a hernia. So they sliced it. So this thing was still alive. Its intestines were hanging out of it. And it's like, from a perspective, I do this for a living. Like, lead on foreheads. It's what I do. Like, it is what it is. Like, and people look at that like, oh, you're kind of dead inside because that's what you do. And it's like, a little bit, sure. I get what you're saying. Those ones are always the toughest for me. And it's like, I had to put it down and it was tough. And I was bullshit. I was pissed that I had to do that. And it's like, they're like, oh, we've been farming for 50 years. And blah, 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 blah. It's like, if you've been farming for 50 years, you should have known better than to just put that pig down as soon as that happened and walk away from it. And all they could talk about was like, oh, well, we want to utilize it, this, that, and I'm like, dude, I'm handing you back a 20-pound skun out rabbit. Like, and like, I got through it, skun it out. In the middle of it, he was like, well, our neighbor does feed raw. I was like, I'd give this to your neighbor. I wouldn't eat, like, before I even took the shot, I was like, listen, I am willing to put it down and put it in my compost. Do not eat this. This has been sitting like this for an hour and a half. Do not eat this. They're like, oh, well, our neighbor feeds raw. And I was like, then give it to them. At this point, I have zero connection to this. Like, if you choose, I have told you up and down, do not eat this. If you choose to eat it at this point, which I guarantee you they did, that's on you. Like, you just need to have you need to have a base level understanding of what's going on with animal husbandry and just how to work, like how to deal with the meat.
Yeah. Well, I think about my perspective is more like, if I'm sick and have a fever, my muscles hurt everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a reason my muscles hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be eating my muscles probably at that point. Mm-mm. If you don't have to. Like, if I'm starving, the math is different.
Right.
Not starving.
Right.
Yeah. So, like, I had a pig get pneumonia and somebody was like, you need to process that pig right now before it dies. And I was like, I'll be burying that pig in the compost pile later.
Well, it's what you need to think about is it's like, again, like, just to put it back to like my scenario that I brought up. Okay, you're already putting down a 12-week-old piglet. That pig is a loss. That's a loss, 100%. Right. It would be very different if it was a 5-month-old pig that all of a sudden a hemorrhoid popped and it was like, or hernia popped. Hemorrhoid popped, that would be, but there you can go, okay, this animal will dress out at 100 pounds-ish, depending on the breed, maybe over 100 pounds. Okay, I've got a lot of money tied up into this one because I've been feeding it for 5 months. okay, if I can get this thing dropped and skin it and gut it myself, perfect. That's great. To wait an hour and a half, and again, if I had known this on the phone call, I would have said, drop it and put in a pit, immediately. Because then you have to also think, hey, guess what? Animal welfare. This poor thing had to sit there for an hour and a half looking at its large intestine. At that point, it doesn't matter about whether or not you get 15 pounds of boneless meat off the thing for roasts.
Right.
That poor thing had to sit there and look at that and deal with that and feel all that. You need to have some priorities. It's a loss. Deal with it as a loss and move on.
Yeah, that's that sounds horrifying. And I'm sure you see horrifying stuff like that all the time.
The customer that just dropped off these goats, she goes, well, they were introduced to a buck, but we never saw him do his job. So if they are pregnant, I don't need to know about it. And I'm like, oh,
they're
good.
Pregnant.
Yeah, they're guaranteed they're pregnant. So yeah, can't wait for after the podcast. Don't tell my Republican friends. I
just know how goats work.
When we're talking about food safety, every food recall that you've ever heard about came out of a USDA inspected facility, right? So
exactly.
Who cares about what you're putting in your body more? You or the government apparatus that exists to slow things down, get in the way, and make sure that their bills are paid.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal to some people, though. I have friends who they're going to process their animals, and half the family is but we have to pay extra for the USDA inspector who's going to stand there and watch the same processor process it the same way that processor processes it, no matter what.
And the majority of the time does not know how to actually do said process.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't, there are some out there that probably are pretty savvy with it or have been butchers and stuff like that before they were USDA inspectors. 9 out of 10 times, though, you go to your inspector and go, hey, go ahead and skin out that cow. They'd look at you like, I have no idea how to do that. Or
and then how many of those USDA inspectors internationally are watching what's going on in the in overseas factories? Because we have USDA inspected meat coming in from overseas.
So that's
a whole other chapter, isn't it?
That's an interesting one because the way that works now, and they just kind of buckled down on it. The way it did work is meat would come in from overseas and it would be a product of
Chile,
wherever, a lot of South America, a lot of China, a lot of that. Then that product would be processed. It would either be trimmed or cut into shave steak or cut into steaks or done whatever. Well, guess what? While it was in the United States, they performed a value-added service to that product, and that product is now a product of the United States because the United States added value to said products. It's not how any of that works. And again, in all these major facilities, there's a ton of USDA inspectors, and guess what? They're sitting there like this, watching some dude all day hack up ribeyes, or they're watching another dude over here all day cut up pork. And it's what? If your job is just to watch and make sure everything's good, how, after an 8-hour, 9-hour shift, how hard are you watching at 7 hours? How hard are you watching to make sure everything's good at 7 hours? Yeah. I know our inspector. I don't actually remember his name. We called him Scooter. Because he was wildly autistic and would not make eye contact with anyone. And he was my height. He was 6'4", 120 pounds, and just wouldn't make eye contact with anyone and just scoot around everywhere he went. We were a small shop. We'd slaughter 8 beef a day, 16 pigs a day, 25 lambs a day, something like that. He's only got to come in the room. He's got to come in the room at the beginning of the day before the first animal's dropped, make sure everything's clean, all the animals are up, walking around, healthy. Then he would screw off into his office that you have to have for them. You have to build an office and a bathroom for a USDA inspector to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And he would go sit in the dark and listen to bird poems and bird sounds until someone knocked on the window. And he'd walk in, he'd go walk up to the head, peel back the cheeks and go, yep, no worms in the cheeks. Walk over to the organs, go, no worms in the organs. There's a piece of hair there. There might be a piece of poop there that you got to cut off. And there's another piece of hair there. Cool, good to go. And then he'd walk back in his office and listen to freaking whippoorwills like while we're trying to eat lunch. And it's like, what is happening? Like, you're paying, I think it was, I mean, this was years ago now, a couple years ago now, just to have him there. They were paying $80 an hour for a USDA inspector to be on site.
Mm-hmm.
If you went over, like overtime, it was $130 to have a USDA inspector on site. And it's like, for what? Like, I do everything he does now as a custom exempt butcher. If I see organs that don't look right, guess what? They're getting chucked. Like, I know what all that looks like because I know how to break down an entire animal start to finish.
Yeah.
Like,
well, let me ask you this. Are there USDA inspectors at the grocery stores that have their own butchers that buy halves or buy, primals and do all the processing and packaging in store?
Well, I mean, those are so few and far between these days anyway. Like,
I buy a lot of meat from Costco. I see guys back there all the time.
Yeah, Sam's Club does that here.
Yeah.
They still break down halves? Really? Because from at least where I'm up here,
I could go in and buy a subprimal unprocessed.
So are you just getting the subprimal, or are you talking about they're rolling out a half a cow or like a quarter cow?
What I'm saying is they're getting meat delivered,
the subprimals,
and then they're processing it there. So they're doing all of the work that would happen at a regular butcher, right? Without any additional level of inspection. But guess what? Guess what sticker goes on that package when they're done?
USDA
the same sticker that goes on everything else.
But that's because that primal was processed at a USDA inspected facility. Right. So there are just breakdown warehouses where there's just a conveyor belt and there's a dude on one end that just sits there all day and just hacks apart halves and tosses them on a conveyor belt. And then there's dudes all on that conveyor belt that trim it up, toss back on the conveyor belt. Packaged, gone, out. Then that goes to all the different stores around the country. And then those grocery stores buy in subprimals. Then they cut them into steaks and roasts and do whatever. And yeah, and again, I worked in grocery stores too. The amount of bureaucracy that goes into all of that is so insane and, in my opinion, unnecessary. Like I was like, I didn't have aspirations, but it looked like for a little while there, I was going to be like a fairly high level grocery store cutter. Like I was going to get into the apprentice program and do all this stuff. But I had too many write-ups because I had forgot to write down the fat tests on the grind. Because when you grind the trim from the actual store and not just the pink slime tube meat, you have to put it into this tiny little machine to make sure it's exactly 85-15. And I had forgotten once or twice, and gotten written up for not doing that, and was now not able to be promoted in that grocery store chain for, I think it was 8 years until those were off my record. And I was like, okay, bye.
God forbid you sell a package of 80-20 that's actually 83-17.
Right. And it's actually, hey, guess what, kids? Real meat. Not the tube meat that you're gonna buy.
Tube meat. I love how you refer to it as tube meat.
It is. It's tube meat. It comes in a giant 10-pound plastic tube. And God forbid you buy the 73 that it literally comes out of that grinder like cold crayons. Oh, it's so gross. It's so gross.
Yeah.
You're gonna buy meat in the tube, buy bologna.
Let's transition into the boot camp for the last like 10 minutes of the show.
Yeah.
Because all three of us are teaching at the boot camp at Self-Reliance Festival.
Right?
Let's do it.
We're like half the faculty right here.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome. So we're going to start out with fire. This is pre-Backwoods Butcher. We're going to start out with fire and heating rocks to cook with. And then Backwoods comes in with the rabbit segment. Talk to us about what's going on there.
Me
the
with
rabbit processing?
I was going to talk to you more about that more and figure out what we were doing with that.
Yeah, we're going to process rabbits.
Woo! Yeah, I mean, I'm going to teach everyone how to process rabbits. Easiest way to break them down, or at least how I break them down, for the easiest consumption. I mean, I do my rabbits solely with kitchen shears. I don't use a knife at this point anymore. I was talking to Joe, my co-host, who's coming down to SRF as well. This will be his first time. And he is a custom exempt butcher in New York State. And I was talking to him about it after the show, and he goes, "Oh, I'll have a batch of rabbits around that time that needs to go in." I'm like, fantastic, because I'm stopping at his house first. And I'm like,
great. So we can source some rabbits from the network. I was actually, it's on my list this week. Like, I can ask Shawn Mills if he has some. I can ask other people if they have some. But if you have rabbits, that's a good start.
Oh, no, that was going to be my practice, because it's been a minute since I've done rabbits. But
yeah.
But no, yeah. So I'm going to show everyone how to break them down, whether it's going to be for whole rabbits or parting them out for just better meals and stuff like that for your freezer. Because by the end of the time that I was raising rabbits, I would fully break them down to the point to have different packages of the arms, the legs, the saddles, all that stuff, to be able to utilize it in different ways. It's like, I'm not going to say it's hard to cook a whole rabbit. It's not. It's very easy. But you're going to have a lot better time where it's like, hey, I'm going to cook a batch of rabbit and dumplings. Let me pop a package of these saddles out. So now I've got 6 saddles all in one package that it's like, cool, pull all that off the bone. It'll be perfect. Like, hey, I want to do chicken wings. Oh, I don't have any chicken wings, but guess what? I got rabbit arms. Go ahead and bread them and fry them. You got a whole meal of that. Instead of like, now I have this whole rabbit that I'm going to scare my children with, or scare whoever's coming over for dinner, which again, I love it. That was my favorite part about raising rabbits, is cooking it for people and just plopping Bugs Bunny on the table and everyone being like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got 2 rabbit demos. We have the one at the festival.
Yep.
But on Friday, we have a class of up to 20 people. And right now there are, I think, 15 or 20 tickets left, which is the SRF boot camp, where you show them how to process, they process, and then we prep them to cook that day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So we're not letting them go through rigor. And then we're going to slow cook them with those rocks we've heated in a rock pot. And if they fail at this, then their lunch is going to suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure is.
So once that's done, we'll talk about recipes. John Willis is going to talk about raising rabbits. And part of why we're focusing on the rabbit is it's a decently high yield meat critter that you can raise in a variety of ways, depending on what your specific living situation is, to have more resilience and more durability in your life. So we're kind of like following the story of the rabbit, but then we're going to layer in some other things that can add resilience. So then Shawn's going to be talking about water treatment and collection. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about water treatment and collection. I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about different sources, different ways to source water. We'll talk a little bit about spring development. We'll talk a little bit about, different things you can do to move water from where it is to a different place that might be more, accessible to you or your animals, or however you want to do that. We're going to talk about easy ways to treat the water. A couple different methods that are pretty low tech to sanitize water. And so basically the idea is that everyone wants to talk about, solar energy, but the reality is you can get everything that we use energy for, you can use other methods for, but there's no replacement for clean, drinkable water. There's just nothing else that you can do. Like, I don't need a refrigerator. I can actually can all of my meat and use it straight out of the can. Like, I don't need to do that. I like aging my deer before I chop them up, but I don't have to. You know, there's alternatives to those things. There's no alternative to fresh water. So we're going to talk about how to source it, what does good look like, what does bad look like, and then how to get to good.
Yeah. I'm going to be talking about recipes and that sort of thing and making it an enjoyable experience, especially with some herbs you can grow in your yard that are easy to grow. Amanda Willis is going to talk about like the wild herbal remedies that she works on. And we've got we've got a lot of really cool stuff. So I'm going to actually share the screen of what's up here. So Chuck Peoples is going to talk about just basic emergency medical. Sunny Puzikas is coming in and talking about resilience in the form of self-defense, which is something that as a homesteader, that was the last thing I wanted to mess with. And then we've got Tim Riley talking about some important things with gardening. And I think we're going to go out into the swales at Willis's and just talk about like ways to set it up to where the stuff is growing itself, right? Because when you're really busy, it's actually nice to have that layer in there as well. And he's going to talk about companion planting and how that can help you. And then we're going to end with a giant roundtable discussion just for the boot camp participants that'll be organized around who's already in town. And I know Jack Spirko for sure will be at that one. He's promised to be there in time for that. So it's going to be a pretty fun day. It's one day like drinking from a fire hose where we go half hour from person to person to person. Your lunch is cooked by you with fire, which is part of the fun. And those tickets are at selfreliancefestival.com. If you just click on tickets and go down to the workshop area, you'll see the Self-Reliance Boot Camp. Only $250 through the end of the month. So definitely get your space there. And I think it's going to be it's sort of like taking all of this knowledge we have in the network and condensing it into one day as best we can. And it's going to be fun with just like teacher after teacher. I was just like, there are so many talented people who come to Self-Reliance Festival. We got to tap into this. And then Backwoods says he was going to be there in time to do it. So then I was like, well, good. We can actually manage butchering a rabbit and cooking a rabbit in the same day. We can do that with chickens too, but we did chickens last time. So we needed to do something different.
Let's do something different.
Yeah. And so rabbits are something like it's hard for people mentally, I think, to think about making the furry cute thing go away. But once you raise rabbits, you do kind of get over that.
Yeah, you get over it pretty quick.
Yeah.
The other benefit there is that you listed off the group of people that's going to be there, and we're only selling 20 tickets to this. So the availability to ask questions, to get almost one-on-one discussions around all of these different topics is significant. Like if you went last fall to the chicken processing workshop that Joel Salatin did, you got to ask Joel questions. I mean, he walked through the whole chicken operation at Polyface Farms. And so that's the level of intimacy that you'll get with this group of instructors that you're not necessarily going to have access to at the balance of the SRF event, because you're going to be there with 600, 700, 800 other people.
Yeah.
Or you could do what I did and completely fangirl out and not ask a single question and just be like, oh my God, it's Joel Salatin.
Yeah.
Every picture I have, I just look like a goober.
Well, hopefully you're over the fangirldom by this visit, right?
Yes, I will be.
Yeah, it's that's not unusual that people are like, oh, what do I say? It's like, just say something.
Yeah.
And then be cognizant about taking too much of somebody's time, like don't follow your person the whole time.
Right.
There's like a balance between like afraid to talk to him so you don't talk to him and like won't like stuck like glue.
Well, that's what I wasn't used to the last time. Like my last year was my first SRF, and the amount of people that would come up to me with the excitement that I was standing next to Joel Salatin, I was like, this doesn't seem right. No,
Yeah.
I'm me. That's not how this is supposed to work. I say goofy things on the internet.
People are entertained by the goofy things you say on the internet.
Apparently.
All right, well, let's go once around the horn and we'll wrap up.
Beautiful.
Start with you, Backwoods.
You can find me everywhere at Backwoods Butcher 603. So that is TikTok, Instagram, even though it's a wasteland, I don't post anything, and YouTube as well. We will be getting back on YouTube, so stay close attention to that. I'm going to try to get some stuff out this week because I am slammed and have a bunch of product in. So we're going to try and get a bunch of content out. And then also, if you want to listen to me on more podcasts, you can follow me on my podcast, Meet the Critters, MEAT, the Critters. Me and my co-host Joe Blakesley. It is a farming and butchering podcast that get probably in the 58 episodes that we've done. There's probably about 4 hours of actually butchering and farming related things in there, but we have a lot of fun. It all comes back to it. But we have a lot of fun on that. So go check out that. It's on YouTube every Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live. So you can join the chat, and then it's everywhere you can download podcasts.
All right. I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast, and I am one of the founders of the Self-Reliance Festival, which is not your daddy's homesteading and preparedness festival.
Not your grandma.
Not your grandma's, although grandma is welcome. And it's a great, I think the best thing about it are the people you meet there. But in order for that to happen, we have awesome speakers. We have a lot more hands-on demonstrations this October 5th and 6th than we usually have. And then there's always the really cool pre-event workshops that happen. And the vendors are great. But what's really fun is like committing to it, going to it, camping while you're there. So you have time to have those in-depth, real conversations with people. And when you leave there, I've never seen anybody leave the same person that they got there. Somebody's going to ask you something hard, or they're going to ask you something, something that you hadn't thought of before, and your perspective will change. And then it's a whole new world for you after that. And I think that's my favorite part of the festival. It's at Special Operations Equipment in Camden, Tennessee. Check that out at selfreliancefestival.com. And Shawn gets to wrap it up.
All right. Yeah. Shawn Mills with Hack My Homestead. You can find me at hackmyhomestead.com. I pretty much help people with all off-grid type things, even if they're on-grid. So my tagline is off-grid solutions for an on-grid world. I'm currently putting in a natural pond that will be fully solar powered. So if you're on TikTok, you can find some updates there at Hack My Homestead on all the socials. I do have some ebooks that I've published. I just put a link in the chat there, greentechuniversity.com. I've got 5 ebooks there on a variety of subjects related to off-grid living. And so if you're interested in that, you can check that out. I'll also be at SRF, so get your tickets. And I'm not doing a booth there, so I'll be kind of roaming around. I am going to do a couple different demonstrations. But if you want to come talk to me in person and pick my brain about all the off-grid stuff, come to SRF in October because I'll be there the whole time.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on.
Fun.
Of course.
See you guys next week.